Sci-fi games, sci-fi games, sci-fi games. Where do I even begin? Whether you want to be a lightsaber-wielding Jedi, or a power-armored-up badass, there's always a sci-fi game for everyone. But what if I told you that after all I've played, there's one that's far above the rest? What if I told you it was a game that looked like this? With so much complexity and depth that you wouldn't be able to comprehend the UI alone if you fused your malformed monkey brain with that of an advanced alien from Thessia. A game that also has the most fun combat of any turn-based game I've ever played, and with a staggering amount of builds, ranging from speedy cloaked flight hackers to slow armored tanks that just want to blow everything up. Well, almost everything. A game that you can play forever. That game is Cogmind. Compared to other popular sci-fi games like Cyberpunk 2077, or even something a bit closer like FTL, Cogmind might look like what someone who's never used Linux before might see for the first time. An incomprehensible jumble of code and random shapes/numbers that don't mean anything. But just how those people are wrong about my beloved Linux, they're also wrong about Cogmind. Cogmind is a game that significantly differs from anything else I've ever played. It's a top-down roguelike where you play as a cute little robot going through a massive 4-section or more facility of other robots that all want to viciously murderize you. OB10. Sounds pretty normal for a video game, right? Except where it differs from most other games is that the main goal isn't to murder them all back, but instead to escape to the surface, ideally undetected, without being turned into a flaming pile of scrap metal. Whether you want to do this by carefully fighting your way through certain patrols to carve out your own exits, or hacking terminals to find them directly, is completely your own choice. What really makes Cogmind unique though is not what you play as, but how you play. As opposed to other popular roguelikes like Adam or Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, Cogmind doesn't center around the main player going on a grand adventure of wondrous proportions, but instead focuses on a frail, small robot trapped in a giant, and I do mean giant, facility that has to make do with what it's given just to barely scrape by, at least when you're a noob. As you progress through Cogmind, you will come across various parts strewn across certain sections of OB10, and even dropped from enemies and neutrals, made up of power, your source of energy for all your other parts, propulsion, which is essentially your robot's way to move around and support added mass, utilities, which are additional bonus items that could do things like detect enemies or provide additional armor, and weapons. My personal favorite parts because they create absurd amounts of carnage. And who doesn't like explosions? However, these parts break, and I can already hear the screams of anguish coming through the screen from you all.
Don't you know that every game with breakable parts is trash? Just look at Breath of the Wild compared to Ocarina of Time.
Well, that's where I disagree. I know I'll get grilled at the stake like a charred skeever for this opinion, but some of my favorite games of all time like Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl and Morrowind feature item durability systems. And hear me the f*** out, sometimes those mechanics can actually add more to the game than they take away, like in the case of Cogmind. Since you're constantly finding new items throughout the facility and entering new areas where those items increase in quality and rarity, I find the durability system to be a welcome change up from the game's alternatives out there. It never really got annoying either, as it's so easy to get new, more exciting parts anyway. This also adds an additional layer of complexity to the gameplay that wouldn't otherwise be possible, such as the choice of whether to use treads for your main propulsion due to their high integrity but slow movement speed, or legs due to their higher move speed but lower integrity, or the choice to take and use armor to protect your important items in one of your valuable utility slots that you can only increase by speccing into it and foregoing something else as you evolve via moving up the complex, or something like a particle charger or weapon cycler that can instead enhance your offensive capabilities. The name Cogmind is actually very informative about how this game plays, in that you have to use your mind, which might be hard for some gamers, to make constant strategic evaluations in order to succeed. In fact, I'd refer to it as the most strategically rich game I've played in the roguelike genre so far, and that really is saying something in a genre known for its extreme depth and complexity. Much like a game of chess, or checkers if you're on the slower side, Cogmind asks its players to think hard about every single thing they do, as one wrong move could easily spell complete disaster. And you know what they say, think hard, play harder. One other big thing that separates Cogmind from the rest of its peers is its presentation. When you go back and look at other games with a similar level of depth in the genre, it becomes quite obvious that unfortunately, graphics, sound design, and overall presentation aren't really a strong suit of most traditional roguelikes. Cogmind, on the other hand, brings all of the above to an exceptional degree, and in my opinion has to be the prettiest roguelike game of all time, while still retaining all the depth that makes the genre so great. The UI? Stunning! The particles and effects? Fabulous! The overall tile set? Glorious! The sound design? Terrifying. I mean seriously, this is the only roguelike game I've ever played that scared me more at times than actual horror games like Silent Hill. You'll be sitting there in a cave, minding your own business, hearing the deep groans and hums of absolute isolation, only to then come across an unkillable behemoth that can one-shot you in the next moment. Or hacking terminals in alien facilities only to hear distorted whirring that sounds like it could be from the devil himself. Or even stuck in a war-torn outpost run by a certain faction of the game and hear alarms going off and the sound of impending doom as enemy forces draw ever closer to finding and annihilating the base. The level of atmosphere that Kaisrati, the creator of Cogmind, has managed to pack into it is simply put some of the best in any game ever. And this is coming from someone who has played many atmospheric games in his day, and really puts the level of immersion of most other roguelikes to shame. Now, if you're a curious little fella, you may have been wondering,
alien facilities? Warring factions? A surface? Why does everything in this complex want to put your core in a stake and parade you around like you're the second coming of Diddy? There must be more than meets the eye to this game.
It's complicated. Very complicated. Cogmind just so happens to have one of the deepest stories and lores in the entire sci-fi medium. The catch though is that you have to find out about it by reading through terminals scattered throughout the game and going for additional endings, of which there are 8 in total, both of which demand varying skill and experience from the player. Some of the endings even require things like, spoilers here, foregoing an escape from the facility at the top level and going further down into even more challenging levels that even the best of Cogmind players with thousands upon thousands of hours struggle with. So be prepared that if you want the full in-depth story of Cogmind, you're either going to have to become Jog Cogmind himself, at one with everything the game has to offer, or just look up an explanation online. I'm sure you can guess which one my lazy ass chose. Now this is all well and good, and having a game that really nails down all these elements is great and all, but what about the replayability? I want games that I could play forever without getting bored, games that I can sink tens of thousands of hours into. So does Cogmind have that? And to that I say yes. Yes it does. Cogmind is easily one of the most replayable games in my entire Steam library, with an insane wealth of builds to choose from, weapons to test out, and paths to go down. Except unlike most other games of a similar ilk, you don't get to choose what you are when you begin the game. You always start as the same cog in this big machine, in the exact same small starting room, with the exact same starting items scattered around the floor. Where Cogmind gets interesting though, is when you exit that starting area straight into materials, the first and deepest area of the facility. From there on out, you can find all kinds of items for whatever type of build your brain can muster. Nuclear fission cores that could power an entire army, but also take up a lot of mass? Check. Large exoskeletons that could carry all the mechanical butt plugs you could ever want? Check. Quantum rifles that can zap any living matter into a pile of ash? Checkaroni! And you can equip as many or as little of them as you want, as long as you evolve the responding slot of your robot when advancing through the facility, meaning things can get a little crazy. All items also have various different modifiers, ranging from light, which means they weigh less, to improved, meaning they are universally better than regular ones. Also which adds an extra layer of depth to an already impressively deep and replayable game. Everything in this game is carefully balanced with downsides and upsides, meaning that no one playstyle feels overpowered. Well, maybe except flight hack units that can move 3 times faster than enemies and lose their trail just as fast. Thermal and electromagnetic weapons that are usually way more powerful than their kinetic counterparts are balanced out by generating lots of heat that can damage your system if you're not careful, or by taking lots of energy that other parts may need instead. Heavier armor plating that can tank way more damage also has a way higher mass, meaning you need the right propulsion to use it, which is often slower than alternatives, while also taking up more utility slots, meaning you have to forego other very useful utilities. Cores that supply more energy and have more energy capacity overall will often generate more heat, as well as being heavier, meaning you also need to compensate for their downsides. This is one of the things that makes Cogmind such a strategic game, that every decision you make, every part you attach needs to be carefully thought about, as bigger in this game is not always better. And well, if you don't, you're gonna find all your resources depleting like you've just been visited by a voluptuous succubus on a boys' night out. The most fun of all these parts by far though has gotta be the goddamn weapons. I've never seen anything quite like the arsenal and display in this game. Range from simple grenade and rocket launchers, to flamethrowers, to gamma guns, to Gatling lasers, to miniguns, to fusion bomb launchers, to molecular sights. This is Sunny Jim. I could go on all day if I'm not careful. There are 451 unique weapons in this game, and I think it'd be way more fun if you go and figure some of them out for yourselves. And please do remember, they all have different variations, meaning the weapons you get from one run to another, even if going for the exact same build, will often differ greatly. Even back in the ranch, we ain't got pretties like these, Sonny, so enjoy them. The only not so great thing about the weapons in Cogmind is just how much you get to use these puppies, and that is because of the game's alert system. Since you are a robot trying to escape a heavily fortified facility, that means to prevent you from getting out of it at all costs, as you cause more chaos, whether it be by destroying enemy robots, failing to hack terminals, or just accidentally letting out a little poop in the hallway. OB-10 will gradually become more and more hostile to the player, eventually leading to unsurmountable assaults on them if they are not careful to pick their battles and lower their alert level periodically. This means that it is almost always in your best interest to avoid unnecessary enemy encounters to avoid raising your alert level, which is just another thing that Cogmind does to make it feel extremely unique compared to other roguelike games. I mean, what other roguelike game do you know of that has a huge emphasis on stealth? Oh wait. Some of the best ways to avoid enemies in this game are going to come from what is known as info war utilities that allow you to essentially gain more data about your surroundings or enemies without having to put yourself into the direct line of fire. Really once again making Cogmind a thinking man's game, not a game for bumbling buffoons that just want to smash. You can of course still play however you want and blow up absolutely everything you come across, just expect your run to last about as long as you do in bed is all I'm saying. One of the biggest things I'm yet to touch on though that makes Cogmind so unbelievably replayable is the world. Or should I say the complex that feels like a world all in itself. There are so many branching routes you can take in the run of Cogmind, as each floor you explore will have 3 or sometimes many more different exits that lead to different areas of the game. These areas can vary wildly in terms of their risks and rewards, and range anywhere from just another main level of the facility to alternate branches that are sometimes way more dangerous, to even faction outposts that can allow you to take on new quests and even gain unique items. What this all means is that no one run of Cogmind is going to have the exact same areas all of the time, at least until you get the hang of the game and can effortlessly hack terminals to find the exact exits you want, really keeping things fresh even after thousands of hours of gameplay. And some of these factions really are interesting. Once again, I think it'd be better for you to go and figure things out for yourselves, but I will say there's a heck of a lot of lore just waiting for you to uncover if you do decide to pick up the game. Some of you might be gawking like a seagull at the £20 price on Steam, as opposed to the free price tag on the last game I covered, but I can assure you that if this game sounds even remotely like something you'd be interested in at all, you love sci-fi strategy games, and have a bit of patience to learn, this will easily become one of your favorite games in no time. It is a game that you will constantly be coming back to, just waiting to scratch that itch once more, like a butt crack that keeps calling your name at the worst of times. Just don't smell your fingers after each run, or you might throw up from the amount of hours you've spent. Even after all this, I know that I've only scratched the surface of what Cogmind has to offer as a video game. There's still so much that I need to see and do. So many builds that I need to experiment with. So many alternate game modes I need to try out. Heck, I even want to try and get some of the additional endings once I'm skilled enough. But it really puts into perspective just how big this game really is, and just how insane the amount of hours you can get out of it is if you do decide to pick it up. Cogmind also just so happens to be one of the most difficult games I've ever played. It takes quite a lot of time and patience to get into. You will encounter quite a lot of gamer rage during this time, unless you really are the second coming of Buddha himself, as you constantly die to mistakes that you don't even know you're making due to the game's extremely steep learning curve. You will eventually realize that if you want to get good at this game, you're going to need to use resources like the wiki and other players' advice in the Cogmind section of the Roguelike's Discord in order to get good per se, as it often explains so little to you directly, which is a conscious decision by its creator.
That sounds absolutely horrendous. Why would I want to play a game like that?
Well, this leads me perfectly onto my final and most important point about Cogmind, that it is, in my opinion, an allegory for how overcoming unforgiving obstacles can often lead us to the sweetest of rewards. You see, when I first started Cogmind, I had absolutely no clue what was going on. I would just go off and kill every single thing that I came across, often seeing these weird messages at the top of the screen, saying things like alert level raised, assault squad dispatched, and roguebot reported. I also had no clue about how any of the game's systems worked, such as mass, heat generation, energy, matter, speed, or any of the rest of it. To me, this was all just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But to the game, this was a player who wasn't playing intelligently and didn't understand what was going on in the slightest. And so I died. I died a lot, over and over and over, and I felt my frustration with the game growing. Man, is this game really for me? I uttered to myself. But then I made a decision that I really wanted to get decent at this game and understand what it has to offer, as I love so many other roguelikes, and this one is often talked about so highly by so many people, which must be for a reason. I mean, it's often put up there with the likes of the new era greats of the genre, Tales of Major, Caves of Qud, and the rest of them. So why is that, I asked myself. And as I adopted this new mindset like a newborn baby kicking his older brother out of the crib, I started to see the game for what it really was. A super complex and deep experience that I could easily see myself playing for tens of thousands of hours. As I read up more on the wiki about how certain enemies work, how all the mechanics of the game work, and most importantly, how to not get caught farting in hallways, I saw my first ever win in the game. One of the most satisfying moments I've ever had in a video game, period. To top all of it off, it was a pure tank combat build that is coined by many other experienced players of the game as one of the most difficult builds to win with. And this whole experience really showed me something, as Cogmind went from being a game I was deeply unsure was even for me, to a game that is easily one of my favorites of all time, that I will be playing for many, many months to come. I realized that had I never overcame that difficult point in my time with the game, I would have never experienced the glory it had to offer. And much like the main robot of the game, I had to kill old habits or parts of myself in order to gain new habits and constantly evolve my play in order to reap the rewards. I had to overcome great challenges constantly, sometimes taking 30 minutes just to get myself out of dire situations that would end my entire run had I been less patient and strategic. And most importantly, I had to conquer this giant facility and escape as a cog in one massive machine, just as I had to humble my real self as a mere cog staring down the barrel of one of the biggest and greatest games ever made in order to win. And this really made me think about how life has so many similar challenges you won't even understand until after you've experienced them many, many times, and how the resilience to push forward in these critical moments, much like how I did in Cogmind, can often allow us to get the most out of life and make something of ourselves. So maybe some games aren't so silly after all. Maybe games can teach us a lesson that can change our entire trajectory at the right time. And I hope you can also give Cogmind the true shake it deserves and get past all the difficult obstacles it presents, as it may just change your life. It may just become one of your favorite games ever made. It may just become a game you play forever. And if you enjoyed that video, why not check this one out about the most replayable game ever made.